I'm Larry Shields, and today we're going to talk about the original Henry being produced by Henry Repeating Arms in the United States. We're going to talk to you about how to disassemble it, clean it, lubricate it, and reassemble it, plus a few other items such as adjusting your sights and so forth. Before we get started on the disassembly, let's talk about firearm safety. Firearm safety is the single most important subject we can discuss when it comes to handling firearms. I had an instructor tell me one time, never point your firearm at anything you can't replace. Great statement and a lot of common sense in there. Remember, firearm safety first. Let's talk about those safety areas. Number one, always consider your firearm to be loaded. Number two, never point your firearm at anything you can't replace. Number three, never put your finger on the trigger until you have target acquisition. And number four, you are responsible for where that bullet ends up, so always know what's behind your target. Now that we've talked about firearm safety, and there is one other factor here that we need to consider, always wear a good pair of safety glasses anytime that you're shooting or working on your firearm. To continue, select the segment that you wish to view. When performing routine maintenance on your firearm, it is not necessary to completely disassemble this firearm. Frequent full disassembly may affect the longevity of some of the parts. Let's perform a safety check before we start the disassembly. To my left is a block wall. This firearm is safe. Let's get started. First, we need to remove the magazine spring and follower. To remove the magazine spring, we first must take out this sight screw, which holds the sight in place. Be careful not to lose this little screw, it's very tiny. We'll set it over here and we'll slide this off, and out comes the spring. We'll set this aside as well. Now that we've removed the barrel sleeve, it does contain a couple more components. You can see the barrel sleeve latch here, and it is screwed into a barrel sleeve latch rod, and it also contains a barrel sleeve latch spring. Now, in order to remove those components, there's the screw head on top of that rod. It's very hard to see and hold your screwdriver onto, so we invented another little way to make it easier. So we're going to take this dowel rod, push it into the sleeve, and you can see the latch pops its little head out over here. Unscrew it, falls off, and slowly release the other components. There's your rod and your spring, and this was screwed into the latch here like this, and it is so much easier using a wood dowel rod than a screwdriver. So let's set these aside. Now we have to remove the magazine follower and buffer, which you can see inside here, and we'll set these aside also. Okay, we're going to work on the other end of the firearm now, and you can see this beautiful brass plate. We're not going to take it off, but we're going to tell you how to do it. Right here's a screw. Those are wood screws, and right here's one. And if you want to remove that, just unscrew those wood screws. Now there is a compartment here that flips open, and it's meant to hold your additional rounds that you might want to carry with you. When opening this, use a non-marring tool or use something straight like this so that you can get up underneath it without touching the brass and flipping it open. There are two screws that hold this buttstock on, and we're going to start with this one here, which happens to be the wood screw. And I've placed this firearm in a cradle to help steady it for me while I'm removing this screw, because there's a lot of threads and I don't want to scratch my brass. Put my finger up here to help support. And usually your screws get a little easier as you take them out. This one's not showing any sign of that right now. So we'll keep all the surrounding support there, just to try to keep my screwdriver in the screw. I'd hate to scratch this beautiful wood as well. We're almost there. And I think we're finishing up now. Let's see if I can do that by hand. No, still a little difficult, so we'll continue. Okay, the screw, wood screw, is removed. Now let's see how I need to position this rifle to work on the machine screw. Let's try it over here a little bit more. Now I'll bring this over, and it is located right here. Again, notice I'm protecting that brass with my finger. Always use the appropriate size screwdrivers, and a good screwdriver, the hollow ground, works best. Now this one is not threaded completely through, and it should give way here pretty soon. Not quite. There we go. That's the threaded end of this screw. We're going to remove this support, put that out of the way, and just pull the stock back towards the rear. Okay, now we're going to loosen these two screws, and this one holds the spring for the carrier feed lever, and this one holds the spring for the lever. And when we loosen these two screws, it releases tension. Next, we're going to remove the lever pivot screw, and you'll notice that it also holds the side plates on as well. It's not threaded very far on the other end, and it is completely out of the other side panel. So we must raise this up and gently push the screw out, lay it back down, slide the panel off, take the screw, put it back in place without tightening it down. Sometimes the levers want to move on you, but there we go. Next, we're going to remove this link, and if I cock the hammer, it takes pressure off of the bolt extension rod, which is part of this system. Open the lever a little bit, raise the link up and out. Set that aside. Next, we're going to remove the spring for the lever. By completely unscrewing this little screw here. If I can get my screwdriver in place, here we go. Okay, this is the spring for the lever. We'll set that aside. We'll push out the screw, tiny little screw, and we'll pull out this pin that's associated with the link and the lever. We're going to take out the lever pivot screw now and set that aside. That will allow us to remove the lever. Here's the lever, and we'll set that aside. Notice the feed lever for the carrier is wanting to come out as well. We're not going to take that out yet. We're going to turn this over, and we're going to remove this plate. Set that aside, and now we can take out this link. This is the other link. Now we're going to finish unscrewing this screw here for the spring that holds the carrier feed lever. Probably can't see too much through my hand, but here we go. Here comes the screw. And here's the spring. Now we can remove the carrier feed lever. That's what that looks like. Set that aside. And we're going to remove the carrier at this time. Well, we'll drop it out the bottom. Here we go. Okay, next we're going to push out this pin. Works with the links. Set it aside. And now we're going to release the hammer. And when I do that, it's going to relieve the tension on this pin as well. We'll set that aside. Next, we're going to remove the trigger spring, which is held in place by this tiny little screw right here. If I can get this out far enough with the screwdriver, I can finish it with my fingers, which sometimes work a lot better. Here it comes. This is the tiny little screw which just got removed, and here is the spring, the trigger spring. I'll hold that up for you. That's what that looks like. And that slides in a slot that's on the trigger down in this area here. Next we're going to take out this hammer, but before we do, we're going to take this mainspring located right here and loosen it slightly so that you see the hammer move a little bit while I'm doing this. It's relieving the tension that's on the hammer, and it's going to make removing the hammer easier. So let's remove the hammer screw. Still has some tension on it. There we go. Here's the hammer screw. We'll set that aside. Out comes the hammer with the associated links down here, which works with the mainspring. Now we will complete the mainspring removal. A few more threads and it'll come out for us. There we go. Here's the mainspring, and the links on the hammer will work with the mainspring like this when they're in the rifle. We'll set these aside, take out the mainspring screw. There's a pin here that was pressed in place that holds the trigger in place, and we're not going to take that out. It's a very tight fit, and if you need to take that out, contact customer service at Henry. They will be glad to take care of it for you. Here you see a spring that's connected to the latch on this side, and that's the lever latch. When you turn this latch, it will hold the lever closed. Good to use this when you're loading your firearm. And we're not going to take it out. If you need to, you just remove this screw right here and reverse it to put it back in. There's a few parts left, the bolt extension rod, and a lock right here which holds the bolt extension rod in place. Now there's tension on that rod because of the spring that's on the firing pin. So we want to remove this lock, and to make it easier, I'm going to push in on the extension rod and pull the lock up and out of its seat. There we go. I'll pick that up and show it to you. This is the lock that goes down in to the bolt and rests on the flat spot of the extension rod, which is right here. And that lock holds that extension rod in place. Now we're going to take the bolt out, raise it up and out, And out comes the firing pin and spring. And that's the bolt assembly. We're going to take the extractor off the bolt, but I wanted to show this to you. The little lip that has to be kept clean when you're doing the cleaning process. So we're going to push this up on to our little block, and I'll show you there's a pin right here. That pin needs to be pressed out to get the extractor out. It's going to take a little bit of hammering, not much. Let me see how I'm doing. It's coming out, almost there. There are no springs associated with this extractor other than itself. In other words, it is a spring as well as an extractor. Here we go. Pin didn't come all the way out, and we really don't have to take it out. There's the extractor. You can see where that little pin goes down through here. No springs inside here. So this steel that this is made of acts as a spring as well as an extractor. So we'll set that apart until we get ready to clean it. This completes the disassembly of this firearm, and as you can see, here are all of the parts that make up this fine rifle. As you can see, all of the pieces parts are basically where they were when we finished taking this firearm apart. Now, instead of trying to move those out of my way, I think we're going to work kind of around them. So the first thing we're going to clean is the bore of the rifle. And we're going to bring in this little stand. Set this down in this stand. And we're going to clean it from this position. We have a cleaning rod that is long enough to go through from here to here. And 1.5 feet extra, I think. But we have a brush that we're going to use first, and we're going to wet this brush down before we run it down through the bore. So you can use any of your cleaning fluids that you are familiar with and like. And then we're going to push this brush down through the bore and loosen all of the debris that might be in place there. I think I'm going to wet this one more time and run it through there one more time before we start with the cloth. The more you can get loose, the carbon that's been drying on there, the better off you are. Okay, we're going to push this brush all the way through. Okay, once the brush is finished going through the bore, we'll take it off and pull the rod out. Okay, I've put the brush back on the rod, and we're going to use it with a combination of a patch to clean a little bit more inside the bore. So we're going to spray just a little cleaner on this patch. I'm going to start this brush in here, push the patch down in here. Let me get it so it's going to be covering the brush the best I can. And now we're going to push this through the bore. Okay, as this patch and brush comes out, you can see the deposits of residue that came out the inside of that bore. So if you had a brass brush on here, you could not, it's not recommended that you pull it back through the bore, but since this is a nylon brush, we can do that. Okay, we're going to take another patch, which we've sprayed down with some cleaner. And we're going to use two hands on this rod because it is so long. Make sure it gets on the brush in the appropriate place. And we're going to push this through the bore again. Here it comes. You can see this is the second patch that we've ran through there with this brush. And it is filthy. So we're going to keep doing this for quite a while. Okay, now that we've got the bore clean, we're going to put some light grease on the inside of the bore. This will penetrate the pores of the metal and protect it. And that's something we all want with our firearms, is protection from rust. So push the brush in, and the brush is going to push the cotton patch through the barrel, putting a coat of light grease on the bore. Okay, that's our second push through the bore with some light grease, so it should be well oiled and preserved. So, okay, we brought in our cleaning board and we placed all the parts on them, and we're going to spray them all down with the cleaner degreaser. And then when we get all of these covered with this cleaner and degreaser, we're going to take a minute and turn them all over so we can spray the other side. Okay, we're going to scrub on the bolt. Here's the extractor on this side of the bolt, and when you're cleaning the breech here, you got to make sure you get up underneath this extractor, because there's like a little lip there, and it will collect carbon and maybe not extract the brass as well as you would like it to. Okay, let's dry this one off. Try to get the pieces as you're cleaning them as dry as you can. Set that aside. Bring in the carrier and notice the ramp here on the carrier. I'm going to take the smaller end to get down inside here. Lots of debris. I'm going to give it a little more spray. A little more spray for this side as well. Okay, get all that debris off of there. We'll start to dry this and wipe this down. Okay, I'm finishing up this carrier, and it's about as dry as I'm going to get it with these two patches. So, okay, we're going to set the carrier aside and go off screen, clean all of these parts, and then we'll come back and put lubrication on them. Okay, we've cleaned all of our pieces to this firearm, and it's time to lubricate. And every piece of metal deserves a very light covering of oil of some sort, or of your preference. The one thing that you don't want to do is to over lubricate. I'm putting some oil on my clean cotton patches, and I'm using 2 because I'm going to clean this or oil this spring, and I want to hold it with 1. I do not want to pull this spring with any type of strength that will stretch it. So we're just being very gentle here. I'm turning the spring with 1 hand and holding the oiled patch on it with the other. Let's go back here a little bit. If you're ever out in the rain and you come home, make sure you tear this rifle down and clean it and lubricate it well, because there's going to be a lot of moisture inside of it. And what does moisture do? Creates rust if it's not protected. Okay, we are lubricating these parts, and we're going to go off camera, finish lubricating them, and then come back when it's time to reassemble the firearm. This completes the cleaning and lubrication process for this firearm, and we're going to start the reassembly process. Okay, it's time to reassemble this firearm, and we're going to start with the bolt and put the extractor back in its place. I have the bolt here on my block, and you can see that I didn't take the small pin out all the way because it released the extractor. So I'm going to place the extractor down in its seat, making sure that it's pushed back all the way here, right there. And I'm going to roll this over, holding the extractor in place, and I'm going to tap on that pin very lightly just a couple times to make sure I'm getting it started into the extractor. It looks like it's going in pretty well. It did. So now we need to put a larger hammer on it and tap it down in a little bit more. Let me figure out how I want to hold this so that you can see it. Let me turn this just a little bit for you. That's better. I'm going to hold the bolt steady with the punch on the pin and tap it a couple of times. And that is recessed far enough. Let's check the other side. Excellent. The extractor is back in its seat. We're going to start reassembling this firearm by putting in the bolt and all the associated parts. And we take the bolt and the firing pin and the firing pin spring and place it in its seat. Now we're going to raise the rifle up here and place the bolt. Then we'll take the extension rod and place it like this, with the flat spot being where it needs to be positioned, and the firing pin and its spring are in place. Now to push this little lock and hold that extension rod down in place, we need to push on the extension rod. I'm trying to get my fingers out of the way here for you. Push on the extension rod, which should allow this lock. Let me try it again here for you. You can see the tension that it has because of the spring on the firing pin. So now we've got the lock in place, and we're going to put this pin back in place as well. And to help do that, we'll push on this extension rod again, making it very easy to put that pin in place. Next, we're going to put in the hammer and associated parts such as the mainspring. And we're not going to screw this down all the way tight. We're going to leave it loose so that it helps us with the alignment of the other screw. We'll get this started with our hand. And then bring in a screwdriver. I hope everything's aligned and just, yeah, there we go. It's about halfway now, so mainspring's still loose. Here you can see the other end of the mainspring, and that end needs to be joined up with the link that's on the back of this hammer. So we're going to put that down and in place. And it went in too easy, so I think we missed it. We'll try it again. Sometimes if you don't get that mainspring centered when you're installing it, let me check it. Make a little adjustment because it's still loose. It makes it difficult to get this part where it's supposed to go, and it's where it's supposed to go now. So we're going to align this hole up, take our screw, put it in place, come back over here and tighten up this mainspring screw. I think I need some light coming in from the back side so I can see. Okay, that's almost tight. Okay, now we will tighten the other screw. Going in slowly. sometimes if this isn't lined up perfect for you, you can wiggle the hammer a little bit and it'll align real fast for you. Okay, the hammer's in. Time to put the trigger spring in to its seat. Little slot there in the trigger. There we go, and you can see how the hole lines up. This is a tiny little screw, and sometimes it can be very difficult to do that, but I think I'm going to try with my fingers a little bit just to get that started, and I think that's going to work better. There we go. Helps if you have proper vision too. With the right glasses. Okay, that's just about tight. See that trigger come forward when I tightened it up? And we can turn this over. There's the safety. Everything's functioning just fine. Okay, next we're going to put in the carrier and the carrier feed lever, and I'll show you how that is supposed to go together. And I'll take them back apart and put in the carrier. Place when you're putting in the carrier feed lever, you have to push the carrier up so that you hit that small hole that I just showed you where it goes. And we'll align that there like that. Now we're going to take the lever and slide it up on top of the carrier feed lever and take the pivot screw and align it up. Let me get those lined up again. Here we go. In too far. There we go. And now we'll push the other one up and underneath it where it's supposed to go. Sometimes you need a little screwdriver to get it aligned. There we go. And that's what you're looking for. The carriers drop back down. You can see how this works with this other lever. Now next we're going to put on the lever spring, which will hold these in their position while we're putting the other parts in. And when we're tightening these down, we don't want to tighten them down all the way. We want to leave some space for a little play because it makes assembling the other parts a lot easier. And as soon as I can take my one hand off this screw, I'm going to, because I can control the screwdriver a little better. Here we go. Now when it tightens up, I'm going to just back it off just a little so that that's loose. Now we're going to put in the rear pin and the pin for the lever. Now that may fall out, but that's okay because we can do it from the other side. Now we're adding this link. And we're also going to slide this plate on. We're going to take out this screw. And I'm probably going to have to hold this up and push that back through as we put the plate on. Put the screw back in its location where we had it. Rotate this over. And now we're going to do some of the same things we did on the other side. We're going to put on the spring for the carrier feed lever. When we get it tight, we'll back it out a little bit so that it's still flexible. Put in the other link. Okay, now we can put on the plate. And we need to push this screw back out a little bit so that we can push the plate all the way down, rotate this over, and tighten the screw. Once we get this screw tight, we can tighten down these lever spring screws. A little bit tighter. Let me hold this up so I can get to it. Okay, let's check the function. Let's cock the rifle. Fires. Goes into safe mode. Cannot pull the trigger. Okay, functions great. Okay, we're going to put the stock back on and put the two screws in place. Okay, we're starting with the wood screw first. Okay, it's tight. We're going to flip this over and put in the other screw. Sometimes just a little tap will straighten up everything and put everything in its appropriate place. And we'll try this screw again. Okay, that screw is tight. Okay, the only thing left to reassemble is the barrel sleeve assembly. And there's a few components that need to be reassembled prior to doing that. We have the sleeve latch rod here and a spring that is associated with that. And it goes inside your sleeve like this. And it's designed to have a screwdriver head on that. And can you imagine how hard that would be to put a screwdriver down there and try to keep it aligned when you can just do this with a little dowel rod? Check this right here. We're going to screw the latch on. The tip of that latch rod is threaded and it needs to go inside the latch here and screw down. Okay, I think I may have started it now. Now we screw it down all the way. Okay, here's the sleeve latch and there's a groove that it has to sit down into. And on one side of this latch, it's round, which means it has to go on this side of the sleeve. And I'll push it out a little bit, maybe you can see that. And it slides right down into its little groove. And on the other side, there's a square end that locks up with the sight once you get this on the barrel. Okay, we're going to put in the follower. And here is the buffer that goes in first. We're going to roll this up so you can see what I'm doing. Next, we're going to take the spring, put it in on top of the follower. Then we're going to take the barrel sleeve and start that on at the same time putting the spring into the sleeve, which this does take two hands. There we go. sliding it down and in place. If you can see this little indentation or cutout right here, that works in conjunction with the latch lock here. So that has to be placed underneath to where it can get in its seat. I'll get my fingers out of the way here. And then lock in with this latch lock. There's a little tiny screw that goes right in here. Okay, the sleeve and the barrel are aligned pretty much. Let me turn this just a little bit more, or that screw is not going to go in there for me. I want to use two hands on the screwdriver here. It seems to work better. Okay, tightening up. Everything's aligned. That completes the reassembly of this firearm. And if you need additional information, refer to the manual, or you can contact Henry Repeating Arms for additional information. Short words on the sighting system on this rifle is a fixed blade on the front, and you have a folding ladder on the rear. You can adjust this in increments of 100 yards all the way up to 800 yards. And that will shoot a long distance. Okay, with this folded down, you can see that there's a little sight right here, open sight, to use in conjunction with the front fixed sight. Okay, on this rear sight, if you want to change the windage, you need to drift this sight either left or right, depending on where you want to align your sight with the front blade. About loading this firearm, and the first thing you want to do every time you load it is to activate the hammer safety and make sure that that is set. Let's turn this over, and we want to make sure that the lever doesn't come open during the loading process, so we're going to lock it in place with the lever lock. Place the rifle on a slant, push the follower up and push it over, which now opens up the compartment for the rounds to be dropped. This firearm will hold 13 rounds. I don't have 13 dummy rounds, but I have 6, so we'll use 6 today. Now, a couple of things you need to keep in mind, and it's where your left hand is going to be held on this barrel, because as you fire rounds, this follower is going to come down like this. You don't want your hand on top of the carrier and interfere with the loading of the cartridges. So you must hold it here or any place else on the barrel. I'll turn it over a little bit and show you what I'm talking about. And then when I bring a round down, see that follower jump down close to my hand? See how it hits my hand? If I don't move my hand, then it's going to interfere with the loading process down here in the carrier. So we need to keep pressure on those rounds with that follower. So you got to always be aware where that follower is and your hand is located. It moves all the way down. And again, when you get down here to the end, you think your firearm might be empty. It's not. It's always one in that carrier hiding, or maybe 2. Do it a couple more times to make sure. And this firearm is safe and all the rounds have been removed. Okay, I talked a little bit about keeping your hands away from the carrier here, and it will interfere with the loading process. And I'll show you that's why. It moves around, and if your fingers or anything else interferes with that process of up and down, you're going to have a malfunction in your loading process. So don't get in the habit of carrying your firearm by this part of the firearm. Okay, we have 6 rounds in the rifle and none of them are in the chamber yet. And I just wanted to show you how this operates. Give you a little look at it here. A little slower. How it ejects them. Empty. Okay, here you can see the rounds that are in the firearm, and I just wanted to give you another view of what it looks like when you're loading around or ejecting around. Think it's empty again? No. Okay. Firearm is empty now. Let's talk about taking cartridges out of this firearm that you don't want to shoot. And the first thing you got to remember is put the safety on. Safety's on. Keep your finger off the trigger over here. Take the follower up. Turn the firearm in this direction. And make sure you put the follower back in its seat. And the reason being is we want pressure in there, so I can show you. You still have a round in the carrier and the chamber. So this firearm is now safe and empty. The next way to remove the cartridges from your firearm is not quite as safe as the other ones that I just showed you. And the reason being is when you push them out via the lever, it's cocked all the time in between each lever action. And if you make a mistake and hit the trigger during this process, it's going to fire. So this system is not as safe as the other system that I just got through showing you. Okay, we finally made it to the range and we're going to fire these firearms, and that's generally where we have the most fun of this process. So we have the original here, and I want to run across a few things that we talked about back at the studio. Okay, before we load this, activate the safety. Make sure it's on. Keep your hands away from the carrier. You may interfere with the loading process. And as you fire your rounds, this follower is going to change position, and you always have to keep your support hand away from that follower as well. When you're loading, let's say, I lock this lever in place with the latch here, and that will keep this lever from coming open when the rounds drop down. This firearm holds 13 rounds, and we're going to load 13 rounds. So let's open up the mag and drop them in. That's 6. And 10. This firearm has a lot of weight in the barrel. Okay, we are fully loaded. You can see here, and the follower is aligned with the magazine. And before we shoot this, we're going to put on our glove, because this has a tendency to get warm when you're shooting a lot of rounds. It'll give us a little bit of protection. Okay, I'm going to load a round. First of all, I have to take the lever lock off. There we go. The range knows that we're hot. When you're loading around, always make sure it's full and complete and with authority. And here we go. Checking to see where the follower is. I'll move a little bit. Okay, I'll work this a couple more times just to make sure that it's empty. And this rifle shoots really nice, not much kick, a lot of fun. Okay, I have a couple ideas or suggestions for you. When you come back from the range, you should clean your bore, and that's very, very important. But you should also clean your magazine. It's totally open and exposed to the weather. And if you can get yourself a long rod and a mop, and just run that mop, I'm going to stand up here for you, and run that mop down into the magazine a couple times, twisting it. You can get some of that debris that may have gotten in there when you were at the range, or moisture. Look at the inside of that magazine. That right there shows you that you do have residue buildup down in your magazine. Very important. Keep moisture and dirt off your firearm, and it'll function for you when you go to shoot it. Okay, a little more tender loving care for this firearm. Back from the range, and when you handle a rifle that has brass on it, you're going to leave some fingerprints. In the manual, it will recommend 3 different products to use to clean the brass or to polish it. We have chosen to use Flitz, and I'll show you how that works. Always use a good rag that is designed or designated for this type of polishing. This will make your brass shine. And for those of you that were in the military, do not use Brasso on this brass. That's designed for belt buckles. This really makes this firearm shine. Little elbow grease. Take off all of the finger smudges and debris. And you do the rest of this receiver the exact same way that I just did the top of it, and it'll last you a long time.